Okay, our second developmental theory is Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and this is something we touched base on last week in one of the introductory lessons to the unit. So, pretty self-explanatory. Maslow said we need basic needs that kind of then build on upon themselves to get to a higher level. So again, these are pretty self-explanatory. Physiological needs, the need to eat, drink, sleep. If we have that, then we can have our security needs, the need to feel safe, secure, unharmed. Um, then, if we have that, then we can go to the need to be loved for others, to belong, the sense of belonging. If we have that, then we can look for esteem needs, the idea to be noticed or want to be noticed. Then we have the aesthetic needs and the need to understand, to explore, to get knowledge. And then after that, there's the need for creativity. Now, I've read that Maslow theorists suggest a very small percentage of us actually get to this level. And again, how could you assess that? I don't know how you could, um, but you could assess Will Hunting and see what needs did he have or not have growing up. So that's Maslow's hierarchy. Next one I think is the family life cycle, and I think it's the easiest one um, to relate to, uh, and it's the easiest one to apply. So within the family life cycle, um, it says that we have three basic tasks that need to be fulfilled, and um, they are so individual needs to complete three tasks. We need to form an identity separate from the family, and this is a process called individuation. Individuation. Uh, so you have to get launched from your family and then uh, begin to establish your own identity that is separate from your family name. So you have to kind of build your own name, and you're not just associated with, oh, you're so and so's kid or you're so and so's sibling. Um, you're supposed to form an identity that's separate, and sometimes that's hard, especially if you're from a small town. And sometimes geography plays a role in that. If you live beside your in-laws or whatnot growing up, maybe it's hard to have that separation. The next one's make uh, new or form new intimate relationships. Must form intimate relationships. And the final one is make first commitment to a new job or an occupation. They also say that the relationship between parent and child will change as you get older, and it'll be less hierarchical. So right now, if there's a social status, your parents have a certain stature or power over you. Um, and so when you're launched next year, you're away at school, you have more independence and you're not as accountable as you are in high school right now. So this is going to be difficult when you come home for Thanksgiving or you come home from first year, because your parents only know one way to parent, and that is in this hierarchical kind of structure. And they'll ask you questions: where are you going? Who are you going to be with? And these are the questions that you didn't have to answer while you were away at school. So it takes some adjustment for both of you, both sides, to kind of eliminate that hierarchy and become on more of an even level. And it's a really interesting process to observe. At the end result, there's going to be some speed bumps to eliminate that hierarchy. And I think there's always going to be a little bit of a hierarchy that your parents are always a little bit above you. But it's a pretty neat process, and it's pretty neat as you're in your 30s and 40s and to see your parents as equals, if you will. And they also said development or maturity in a person involves in change in response to a crisis. So anytime there's a transition or a moment of suspense, anytime you can deal with that, that's development. Levinson. Levinson's theory of seasons of life. He proposed early adulthood era lasts 25 years, from 17 to 42, and that makes me feel good about myself that I'm still in this early adulthood era. Now, he subdivided that, and the first blank here is transition years, so that's age 17 to 22. He said an individual must leave behind adolescence and begin to prepare for an adult life, and like the family life cycle, is separate from the family of origin. The next stage is entering the adult world, which happens between 22 and 28. And four major things must happen. One, form a dream, give it a place in the life structure. And the dream is defined here. It's your sense of self in the adult world, not necessarily the dream of, laying on a beach and drinking coffee all day. It's your sense of self in the adult world. Form mentor relationships. So usually people who are older than you in your occupation that give you guidance about life, about career, forming an occupation, and then forming love, relationships, marriage, and family. The final blank is the age 30 transition. It's called the age 30 transition. This is you reevaluate the dream. Um, is the dream and life structure realistic or satisfying? And this is where some people go through the quarter life crisis. The idea that you've worked your whole adolescent life, high school, university, or college, and you get this job. That's what your goal has been for the last 10, 15 years, and then all of a sudden you achieve it. Well, then you ask yourself, is this what I really wanted? Uh, and you respond, you change if the answer is no. Or is the dream realistic? Um, and maybe that's the difference between dreams and goals, whether it's realistic or not. Regal's interpretation of development, um, he said that you can't really predict what will happen um, in terms of adult development. It's not just predictable stages, but it's in response to internal and external changes. And so the first one is the individual psychological dimension. So that's your emotional maturity. Number two is your individual biological dimension. That's your physical and sexual maturity. Number three is the cultural sociological dimension, which is societal expectations. And number four is the environmental dimension, which is the economic and political dimension. So he says when development occurs, when one change in one dimension affects another dimension. So as okay, so emotional maturity, as you reach 16 or 17, your critical thinking skills improve, your reaction time improves, and we all know that we become mature as we age, or should. So because of that change, society says, okay, at 16, you can have your license because you have the skills necessary to be safe on the roads, relatively speaking. So that's would be another change. Um, in a kind of a grade 9 phys ed kind of mode, you talk about the moves towards puberty and such, and then how that can then affect your emotional maturity as well. And I don't want to speculate too much on that because I'm not a phys ed teacher. And the last one is Perlin's theory of psychological distress, and says that adulthood is not a series of transitions, but rather a lifetime of continuous change. And so, have you ever thought about how much you will change once you're 34 or 35? Will you change much between 34 and 65, or will your general demeanor be consistent? Now, he said that there are four elements that determine an individual's path. First one is individual characteristics like race, ethnicity, gender, IQ, education, and such. Next one is where I need some assistance. It's skills for coping with stress. Number three is availability of social support networks. And number four is the nature and timing of stress that requires a response. Now, he believes that people can change their life structure at any time, that you can, make a concerted effort to change where you're at. I'm not so sure of that, because if you look at theories of behavior modification, It's something like only 10% can truly change their behavior and maintain it for the long term. He says that changes in behavior result from a socialized response to a common social clock rather than from aged link interchanges. Okay, so those are the last six, I guess. Again, I put the emphasis on Erickson, but I think if you're able to apply two or three of these to a given character or person, then you're in good shape. I will ask you some details about each of them, but in terms of application, if you can apply two or three of them going forward, you should be in good shape. So sorry about the technical difficulties, and